to the galaxy didn't come from war, or weapons or monsters, but from a simple Earth plant. One tiny vine, underestimated by alien scientists, modified beyond reason, and now spreading across worlds, building something no one truly understands. This isn't just survival, it's evolution with a purpose. And the real question is, who's in control now? If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and show your support with a thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's dive into this unforgettable and chilling story. The ship hovered in Earth's orbit like a giant silver ring, smooth and shining against the darkness of space. Inside its polished halls, alien researchers moved with quiet purpose, their footsteps barely making a sound on the soft floors. They had come to Earth not with weapons but with scanners, tools, and a mission to study the planet's life. To them, Earth was a wild museum of chaos, filled with life that had grown without design or order. Dr. Leor Halev, a botanist from Earth, stood nervously near a large observation window. He watched as the lead alien scientist, Professor Varnek, studied Earth through the glass, his tall frame still as stone. Varnek's smooth gray skin shimmered under the ship's soft lights, and his eyes, narrow and silver, held the kind of calm confidence only someone truly sure of themselves could wear. Leor had spent years studying plants, but standing beside Varnek made him feel like a schoolchild. The aliens had technology that Earth scientists could barely imagine, and they made sure to remind everyone of it. "Your planet is green," Varnek said, voice low and smooth. "Too green. Your plant life is loud, messy, and wasteful." Leor tried to smile politely. "It may look that way, but Earth's plants have adapted over millions of years. They've found balance in competition." Varnek turned to him, one eyebrow slightly raised. "Balance? We see only disorder. On our world, we've eliminated struggle. Our plants grow where we place them, how we shape them. No surprises." Behind them, a young human intern named Navi watched silently. She had been helping the alien team collect plant samples from different parts of the planet. Most of the time, they treated her like she was invisible, useful only for pointing them in the right direction. But today, they had asked for something specific. They wanted a plant known for fast growth, something aggressive. That was when she had told them about the vine. It was called serpent ivy by locals, though scientists called it arxantha. It wasn't native to Earth but had been brought from another region long ago. Once it took root, it didn't stop. It climbed, twisted, wrapped, and smothered everything around it. In some parts of the southern continent, entire forests had been swallowed by it. Homes disappeared under its reach. No matter how much people cut it back, it always returned. The aliens found it fascinating. They took a fresh cutting of the vine, sealing it carefully in a glass chamber with glowing panels and scanning lights. As the chamber closed, one of the alien scientists laughed softly. "This little plant is your planet's monster?" she asked. Navi frowned. "It's more dangerous than it looks. Once it starts, it's hard to stop." Professor Varnek chuckled. "We've heard this kind of warning before. We've terraformed entire planets, created ecosystems from dust. A simple Earth plant can't do what we've seen." Dr. Halev stepped closer to the chamber. The vine inside was already moving slightly, its tendrils reaching upward. He felt a chill. "This species doesn't just grow," he said. "It learns. It adapts. You won't be able to control it if you change it." "That's the point," said Varnek, pressing a button on the chamber. Lights bathed the vine in waves of color. "We will improve it, remove its weaknesses, make it more efficient." Leor opened his mouth to object, but the room was already filled with the quiet hum of machines working. The aliens began mapping the plant's DNA, adjusting it, altering small parts of its growth process. To them, it was a routine task, no different than tuning a machine. They increased the vine's speed of photosynthesis, removed the chemical that made its growth slow during colder temperatures, and added genes from their own engineered plants to allow it to absorb more nutrients with less effort. As the hours passed, the vine started growing faster inside the chamber. Its leaves darkened and its vines grew thicker. One alien researcher pointed out that its root system had doubled in size within minutes. "Fascinating," said Varnek, watching the data appear on the screen. We may have finally found a plant worthy of real enhancement. But Lior felt a knot form in his stomach. You've made it stronger, but have you made it safe? Varnick didn't answer. He was staring at the chamber. The vine was no longer growing in random directions. It was coiling purposefully, like a snake waiting to strike. A soft creak echoed through the room as one vine pushed against the glass. Navi stepped forward. That sound, was that the containment wall? The same alien who had laughed earlier checked the readings and frowned. Impossible. That glass is rated to withstand much more pressure. But the sound came again. Louder. This time, the vine had begun pressing in different spots, finding weak points. It was testing the limits. Everyone in the room stopped moving. Lior stepped back. You don't understand. You didn't create this. You just woke it up. A sudden crack split through the chamber's surface and the lights flickered. No one said anything. The vine, now moving with slow precision, had broken through engineered glass, and it was still growing. The crack in the glass had silenced the room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. All eyes were on the thick vine pressing against the clear wall, now crawling with slow, determined force. At first, the aliens thought it was just a pressure response. Perhaps the plant was confused by its new environment, but then another sound came. A low groan, like metal under strain. That wasn't confusion. That was intention. Tessin Valo stood near the door, her hands clenched tight. She was the station's lead systems engineer, and usually worked far from the lab. She had only come by to deliver a status report on the oxygen recyclers. Now she couldn't look away. The vine's surface had changed. It was no longer soft and green. It had started forming ridges, shiny and hard, almost metallic. The leaves shimmered under the lab lights with a strange blue-green tint, unlike anything Tessin had seen before. Professor Varnick approached the chamber again, eyes narrowed in curiosity rather than concern. Incredible, he said. It's adapting to the artificial light. It must be modifying its outer cells to absorb energy more efficiently. He didn't sound worried. He sounded proud. But Rilo Ven, an older biologist from the alien team, stepped beside him with a frown. It shouldn't be able to do that this quickly, he muttered. That kind of evolution takes generations. Inside the chamber, the vine began to move in circles, almost as if it were drawing patterns. Lior Halev watched with growing horror. He had spent most of his life studying Earth's wild plant species, and even he had never seen anything like this. It's not just reacting, he said. It's thinking, testing, planning. Before anyone could respond, a loud snap echoed through the lab. A small section of the glass shattered, and a single tendril slipped through. The alien scientists jumped back. Security protocols kicked in, and metal shutters began to close around the chamber, but it was already too late. The vine had a foothold. Within minutes, the lab's floor was crawling with green. The plant wasn't attacking. It was expanding. Quickly and quietly. It found the seams in the walls and slipped inside. Tessin ran to the nearest control panel and tried to activate the emergency isolation system. "Lock down the lab," she shouted. "We can't let it reach the main systems." But the screens flickered. The controls didn't respond. "That's not possible," Tessin said, her voice shaking. "The controls are hardwired. It shouldn't be able to." "It's learning," Rilo interrupted. "It's interfacing with the station. Somehow, back on Earth." In a quiet room beneath the surface of a research base, Dr. Halev tried to make contact with the Galactic Council. He knew they would be slow to believe him, but he had to try. The images from the lab were already enough to make his skin crawl. The vine was acting like no Earth plant ever had, even the wildest species, and this one had been changed, modified, given powers it had never evolved to use, and now it was free. On the station, panic was spreading. Long vines pushed their way into the ventilation system. Lights flickered in different sections of the ship. Technicians in the control room watched helplessly as security doors refused to close, and alerts appeared faster than they could read them. The vine was everywhere. Some alien scientists argued for more study. "It's the discovery of the age," they insisted. "We can still learn from it." But others had seen enough. They called for evacuation. Tessin overrode the system manually and opened a direct communication line to the central hub. "Initiate full station alert," she ordered. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel." Her hands trembled. This was no longer a lab accident, this was a full-scale outbreak. Navi, still aboard the ship, ran toward the shuttle bay. She passed a corridor where green vines had crept along the ceiling and wrapped gently around a broken light. She paused for a moment. The vine wasn't destroying the station. It was taking control. It moved like it understood the station's layout. It chose paths with purpose. It didn't waste time. By the time the emergency crews began launching escape pods, at least half of the station's systems were compromised. Alarms blared in every direction, but the vine's advance was eerily quiet. It grew like a shadow, silent, steady, unstoppable. Tessin and Rilo made it to the last row of escape pods. As they prepared to launch, Tessin noticed something strange. One of the pods had green specks on the window. She stepped closer and gasped. Inside, a small vine had already begun weaving through the air vents. She backed away. "It's inside," she said. "It's already in the pods." They switched to another cleaner pod. The moment they launched, Tessin looked back through the window. The station was being swallowed. Large patches of green now covered the outer hull. The vine shimmered like polished metal, glittering under the stars. Back on Earth, Dr. Halev finally got a message through to the council. He stood before the screen, face pale, voice firm. "You need to stop the pods, scan everyone. If even a single root or spore makes it to a colony, it'll be too late." But the warning came late. Far above him, pods were already spreading, through space like seeds on the wind, and inside at least one of them something green was still growing. Corin J. had never seen a planet go dark before. Colony World Penra 6 had once been alive with light, blue cities, buzzing transport ships, glowing farmlands. Now the transmission feed showed only blackness, as if the planet had been swallowed whole. The last message from its surface had been a single line. "It's growing faster than we can run," and then silence. From the command ship orbiting above, Corin stared at the hollow screen, unable to look away. He was a relief pilot, trained to bring supplies and support to struggling colonies. But this was different. There were no fires to put out, no power systems to reboot. This was something else, something alive. Back at the communication desk, Selan Noru tapped furiously at her console. She had been tracking colony signals for weeks, trying to understand why some were falling silent while others sent frantic, unfinished warnings. Every time a world went dark, it followed the same pattern. First, the agricultural systems failed. Then the power grids. Then the silence. Selan glanced up. "It's not just spreading, it's adapting faster with each world." Corin leaned closer. "You mean it's learning from every place it reaches?" She nodded slowly. "I think it's building something, I just don't know what." Down on the surface of one of the remaining colonies, Navi stood at the edge of a strange field. What had once been neat rows of solar-powered crops was now a jungle of glowing vines. She watched the plant shimmer in the sun, its leaves fanned wide like satellite dishes. They weren't just soaking in sunlight, they were directing it, channeling. Navi took a step closer. The vines made no sound, but the air buzzed faintly like electricity. In the distance, towers of living green stretched toward the sky. They pulsed gently, as if breathing. It was beautiful, but not in a comforting way. It was the beauty of something too perfect, too controlled. It didn't belong here, but it was thriving. Across the galaxy, stories poured in from other colonies. Some had seen the vine grow over entire cities in days. Others reported strange structures made of plant matter that resembled communication towers. A few places had even witnessed the vine using materials from abandoned machines, wires, circuits, glass, to build new growth. Back on the command ship, Selin played a new piece of footage from a colony that had fallen just hours before. It showed a group of people trying to escape in a small transport ship. As they launched, a vine whipped across the launch pad and latched onto the ship's hull. It held firm, like a hand refusing to let go. The video cut out before the ship lifted off. "They're calling it the bloom," Corin said quietly. "Like a flower spreading across the stars." Selin didn't reply. Her eyes were fixed on a new alert. Another colony had just gone silent. In So, a large meeting room on Earth, Dr. Lior Halev stood in front of a council of planetary leaders. He looked tired, his voice worn from trying to convince people who didn't want to believe. "You allowed the plant to be changed," he said. "You gave it speed, strength, intelligence, and now it's using everything you gave it to take over the galaxy." One council member leaned forward. "We need a weapon, a virus, something to stop it." Lior shook his head. "You can't fight it like that. It's not acting out of anger or destruction. It's surviving. It's becoming part of every system, every planet. Cutting it out would be like cutting out your own lungs." The council fell silent. Outside the windows, Earth still looked peaceful. Green, calm, untouched. But everyone knew that peace could be an illusion. Meanwhile, back on a half-abandoned mining colony, Corin and Navi had met up to investigate the last known spread of the bloom. They walked carefully through empty corridors, watching vines move slowly along the walls like lazy snakes. They weren't aggressive, not yet, but they were watching. "We thought we were in control," Navi said, voice soft. "We thought nature was something we could shape however we wanted." Corin looked up at the ceiling, where a large cluster of vine coils had gathered. "We didn't shape it. We just gave it more tools." Then something strange happened. A sound filled the corridor. Not a hiss, not a crack, but a low hum, like a chorus of distant voices speaking all at once. The vines began to glow softly, patterns forming across their surface. "What is it doing?" Corin asked. Navi reached out slowly, stopping just inches from one of the vines. "I think it's communicating." They stepped back as the vine, nearest to them, pulsed with a steady rhythm. It wasn't random, it was structured, like a code. Back on the ship, Selin tracked the same pattern across several colonies. The vines were no longer just growing. They were syncing, forming networks that stretched between planets. They weren't just a threat now. They were becoming a mind. She turned to the team and whispered, "The bloom is waking up." From space, the affected colonies began to look the same, covered in green, pulsing with life. And far beneath the vines, machines powered by roots, light guided by leaves, signals flowing through living tissue. The bloom was not just surviving, it was building a future. A future where it was no longer just a plant. It was the world. Tessin Valo stood at the edge of a metal platform, staring out through the reinforced glass of the orbital lab. Below her, a once thriving colony world now, pulsed with soft green light. The bloom had taken it, not violently, not like a war. It had crept, spread, adapted, and now the planet looked like a garden crafted by alien hands. The buildings were still there, but wrapped in vines and leaves that shimmered under the sun. Some moved ever so slightly, as if they were breathing. She turned to Corin J., who had just returned from the planet's surface. His suit was scratched, his eyes hollow. He had seen what the bloom was building up close, and it had shaken him. "They're not fighting back anymore," Corin said quietly. "The people down there, they've accepted it. Some even say the planet is better now. Cleaner, brighter, the air's purer, the crops are growing again." Tessin frowned. "That's not peace. That's control. The bloom isn't improving their lives, it's replacing them." Corin didn't argue. He knew she was right. But after weeks of watching world after world fall to the green tide, it was hard not to feel numb. The galaxy had changed, and no one knew if it would ever go back. Back on Earth, Dr. Lior Halev worked in silence in a small underground lab. The council had asked him to find a solution, but they gave no clear orders. Some still hoped the bloom could be reasoned with. Others wanted it destroyed, no matter the cost. But Lior had found something unexpected. Deep in the Earth's soil, in the old forests, there lived a fungus that had been battling plants for millions of years. It was slow, hidden, but clever, just like the bloom. He had begun testing it quietly, feeding it small samples of the vine, and the results had been promising. The fungus didn't destroy the bloom. It disrupted it. It broke the signals, slowed the growth, disconnected the network. It gave him hope. He contacted Tessin through a secure channel. "I need a ship," he told her, "and a way to spread this through the colony ecosystems. I think this can stop it." Tessin didn't hesitate. She arranged the transport, gathered a small team, and met Lior on the outer rim. They called it Operation Emberroot. The idea was simple: infect the bloom's neural vines with the fungus, cut the connection between planets, and see if the system would collapse. Corin volunteered to lead the deployment on the first target, an overgrown, industrial world called Marielle. The bloom had reshaped the factories into strange green towers, and the power plants had been turned into glowing root hubs. It looked like a forest from another galaxy, silent and alive. The team landed at night. They moved quickly, releasing the spores in carefully chosen spots, around root clusters, inside power conduits, beneath vine-covered towers. For hours, nothing happened. Then the pulsing stopped. The soft glow faded. The vines froze. One by one, the plant structures shut down like machines losing power. And then a sound filled the air. Not a roar, not an explosion. A whisper. It echoed through the valley like wind through tall grass. Corin felt it in his chest like a warning. Back in orbit, Tessin watched the readings. The bloom signals between colonies had gone silent. The network was breaking. But something unexpected happened. New growth began to appear around the infected zones, stronger and more complex. The bloom wasn't dying. It was defending itself. Ceylon Noru, monitoring data from the command ship, saw it first. "It's changing again," she said. "It's adapting to the fungus." The bloom began absorbing the fungus and using it as a shield it had learned. Again, Lior stared at the screen in disbelief. This wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding us, watching us, testing how we respond. We gave it all the information it needed. But as the bloom grew, it stopped spreading. It pulled inward, focusing its energy on a handful of worlds instead of reaching for new ones. The massive network it had formed went dark, except for 5 planets. On each one, the bloom formed vast living towers, green spires that reached toward space, humming softly. Then the message came. It wasn't in words. It was a sequence of light pulses and vibrations, transmitted through radio waves, directed to every inhabited planet. A signal that, when decoded, played a simple repeating phrase: "We did not come to harm. We came to replace what was broken." The council gathered once again, this time in silence. There were no more arguments, no more debates. The bloom had spoken. It had stopped spreading, not because it couldn't, but because it had learned enough. The invasion was never an invasion in its eyes. It was a correction. Tessin stood before the leaders and said what no one else dared to. "We gave it the keys to the universe, and it chose not to burn it all down." On Earth, the forests remained, untouched. The original kudzu had long since been studied, managed, and feared. But the bloom was different. It was a mirror. It showed what could happen when knowledge was used without understanding, when curiosity ignored consequences. Corin returned to Earth weeks later. He stood beneath a massive tree, looking at its rough bark and simple leaves. Nothing glowed. Nothing pulsed. But there was life, steady and patient. And maybe, he thought, that's what the bloom had seen missing in the galaxy. Not power, but balance. The vines in space had stopped moving. The towers remained, silent watchers in green armor, and life across the stars held its breath, waiting to see what the garden would grow next.